so worth it.
Oh, boy.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Keith and Mike Watch Deep Space Nine. Today we're talking about Season 5, Episode 24, Empok Nor. So, naturally, we had to come to this episode armed. How's it going, Mike?
It's going well, Keith. Actually, to be frank, it was fun to just take this off the shelf, although I realize I put it on the screw hole side, which is directly opposed to what we said we were supposed to do. Much better.
All right, well, we're going to get notes about the screw holes, for sure.
I'm doing good. Things are good. It's hoodie weather here. My hair has almost returned to its actual natural color. There's look, I got just a little bit of youth left.
Maybe it's not Maybelline.
So I'm going to just have to Darth Sidious it this time. But how are you doing, buddy?
I'm doing well. You know, just it also enjoying the hoodie weather. It definitely, I feel life is returning to happiness once I'm no longer wanting to die every time I step outside. Yeah, so lots going on here in your life, which is why our schedule is a little bit goofy, because you know, somebody's buying a home, hopefully.
Yeah, I mean, barring a major disaster, but, you know, luckily the government has already handed me that major disaster because all of the student loan relief that I had been promised and had planned my whole financial future around has been unceremoniously canceled. So, thank you to all those who...
Yeah.
Anyway, outside of that, things are good. We want to, I guess, send out our good juju to those in the coming path of the storm.
Yeah,
that is
multiple storms, multiple hurricanes happening right now as we're recording this.
Be safe. Heed the government warnings. Don't stay in your home if you don't have to. Get the heck out of there if you can.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So let us, before we get into Empok Nor, we have something else to do. Yeah. We have to begin with a blaze of glory, talking about last week's episode. And if you want me to read your comments, Mike, how does one get the inestimable honor of me stumbling through their comments, cold reading on the internet?
All you gotta do, folks, is be a patron. Or go ahead and tap that super tip, super thanks, whatever.
Super thanks, I think.
See, yeah, some sort of button on the internet. And, you know, give us some money. Don't. Say something nice. Ask nicely. Plenty of ways. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Have something incredibly insightful, because then we probably will read it anyway, because...
I'm probably going to read it anyway, yeah.
But just type something down there. Apparently engagement is the best form of advertisement, so help us out.
Yeah, okay. Well, there you go. All right, so here's what you had to say. Joshua Cronin says, so here's my thing on the Maquis. They were written to give Voyager something to go on. Deep Space Nine didn't want to make this story arc a thing, but they did. And I think they did a great job, as Deep Space Nine writers always do. And it tied up nicely in the end. You don't have a root for the Maquis or the Federation or the Cardassian. You just watch the story. Oh, you don't have to root for the Maquis, the Federation, or Cardassian. You just have to watch the story they presented. I think the acting is great, even by Eddington. Made for a believable story for me. And of course, I made an Eddington figure. I give this 83 self-sealing stem bolts from our friend Joshua Cronin. Yeah, I was silly thinking that there weren't many Eddington figures out there from our amazing action figure customizers. All right, Brian from Video Game Drive-By says, apparently my comment disappeared. Yeah, that's been happening a lot lately. I don't know like what the keywords are that'll make Google delete your comment, but it happens. Trust me, it's not me. So if your comment disappears and I don't see it, we're not deleting anything other than like the obvious. So we definitely are not deleting your comments or missing them on purpose. So they continue, I was listening to y'all with my girlfriend last week, and it was a great way to fill time while we did some mutual door dashing. If I can recall my comment, I wish the Maquis had been better utilized. I give this episode 70 self-aggrandizing stem bolts because of Eddington, but this definitely feels like a, and we will never speak of it again, moment. I'm excited for things going forward. Oh, wow. I don't know how romantic it is listening to us idiots, but...
I need to clear it up, though, for my own Eddingtonification.
Eddingtonification?
That was pretty romantic, I gotta say.
Did we just kiss?
Might as well. No? So, mutual door dashing. In my brain, either they go out and door dash together as a couple, make some extra bucks, which I think is pretty cool.
Great.
Clearly in one car, because it'd be weird if they were driving two cars and trying to listen at the same time. Doesn't seem like the physics work, but could be done, but not practical. Yeah. Or is it we're at home listening and just both ordering DoorDash from different places, which could also
just both
work.
Really hungry. Or it's Halloween season. Are you doing like the ding the bell and then dash?
The
DoorDash, the original DoorDash.
All those sound pretty fun.
That's definitely the best way to be listening.
Although I
to
do sort of like the listening to a podcast. I'll DoorDash from Wendy's, but we don't like Wendy's fries, so you DoorDash Mickey D to get their fries, and then we'll do a triple DoorDash to get a dessert situation brought in. Folks, if you're ever wondering why Mike has a successful marriage, I think he just outlined it right there. Kevin Miles says, I give this 88 self-sealing stem bolts. The Maquis were never evil. They were basically the resistance during the Bajoran occupation. If Kira wasn't evil, neither is the Maquis. No, I think that's a good point. I never thought they were evil. I thought they were boring, which is the greater evil in fiction. See, I think I responded, Keith. Do you see my response on that? I don't have your responses on here. See, peek behind the curtain. This all goes into a Word doc. This entire episode is in an extensive Word document. Right now I'm about 3,000 words for my Word doc for this. I have to, so my feeling is that I do feel like in the beginning they were somewhat neutral, but then they sort of had Ben's friend turn against him, and then with the whole Eddington thing, they definitely used him to make them seem a little more at least antagonist adjacent, and then sort of tried to retrofit him into a sort of hero's journey at the end. It was inconsistent tonally at best, I have to say, as far as their tweener status. Look, they were not baby faces. They were not heels. They were the stone cold of all of the resistance forces in the Federation. That makes it more clear, Keith. Wait, this just in. Sorry, can I stop the episode for a second? New Star Trek figures were announced today, Keith. Yes. Yeah, we need to reach out to them. Yes, because that's sort of huge news, and I just need it to be said today since we're dropping this today. Yeah. We're gonna have to like really make the hard reach out to them because they feel like there are people. Yeah. Okay. All right. So, continuing, YouTube viewer says, the Maquis was one of my least favorite recurring Star Trek story beats, but the writers gave it a dignified ending. Eddington's actor did an okay job here. He toned down his scene chewing a bit, but I'm glad Sisko punched him once. Agreed. This is a good point that sending Sisko in that is a good point that sending Sisko in a runabout is kind of a feeble last line of defense for something this important unless the Federation is aware that Sisko has plot armor. That'd be really handy to know which of your people have plot armor. As I drink my Coke Zero, get some good news here. The carcinogenic effects of diet soda are greatly exaggerated. To get enough aspartame to have a 1% chance in your a 1% change in your chances of cancer, you'd have to drink more than 12 liters of diet soda a day, and drinking that much water will make you sick. I mean, I'm pushing it, but only 1%? I do so many things that are stupider than that. I would have liked this episode better with Cal Hudson. I think one of the reasons the Maquis storyline is so weak is because they were Federation terrorists. Federation terrorists is like a Sesame Street having a Black Ops team. It just seems thematically off.
incredibly well put. The B plot with Nog made the episode better. I like Aaron Eisenberg a lot. Sadly, Jake didn't really have much to contribute. Jake really doesn't do much for almost all of season 5. Your cafeteria story reminds me of when a lunch lady tried to impose a no coughing rule during the quiet period at lunch and got in hot water with the parents. This was in the 80s, where the helicopter parenting hadn't caught on yet, or coughed on yet. All because one kid was fake coughing. They tried to stop 200 kids from real coughing. Boy, that is some hot nonsense. Kira wasn't more invested in the Maquis because the Deep Space Nine writers were never properly invested in the Maquis. I give this episode 75 out of 100 Canadian dollar coins. Hell yeah, they are lucky loonies. Excellent.
Well done.
JD also says, I think YouTube is deleting my comments because I know I left a comment on last week's video. Of course you did. Now, commenting about the weird shot from Wrath of Khan, it's Regular One from 59 minutes and 22 seconds into the movie, if you're counting. The problem is the downscaling. The 35mm video pan and scan, the shot is identical otherwise. Interesting. Story time. So I am distantly related to Quanah Parker. He has the nickname of the last chief of the Comanche. I grew up hearing stories about him and the fights he led against the American army, and how he really only stood down his resistance in the face of utter decimation of his tribe. Eddington's story reminded me of Parker a little, and it's why I always wanted to see better for the Maquis, but we never really got it. And much like Quanah, the Maquis became a footnote in Trek history. Yeah, I mean, there's a Next Generation episode near the end, which draws a much more direct parallel to indigenous people and the Maquis, and I thought that would have really helped tie it together had we made that parallel more. That's a really good point. JD finishes, I've made 2 Eddington figures. Some of the Deep Space Nine best scenes are 2 people in deep conversation. I really do like most of this episode. I'll give it 80 self-sealing stem bolts. Oh, next is my favorite Halloween episode. JD, I'm hoping you get your files back on your computer. Yeah, JD had a power thingy and it zapped his computer, which sucks. But which is why I know it's expensive. I know it's like $140 a year, but for me, Dropbox, it protects me because like my entire life are my files. And
yeah, I mean, it's not just the cost. I recognize, we did an episode with JD one time, and you recognize that not everybody has access to as rock solid network
internet
as we have, and if you don't have rock solid internet, that sort of the syncing aspect of some of these online cloud file services isn't.
Well, it'll just be slower because you're working off your local files on your hard drive, and then in the background it's syncing and protecting. It doesn't really matter how fast.
Correct, but if you have limited bandwidth, there's no way to be like only do your uploads tonight, right? It's trying to do everything at once. So
you can pause it. You can pause it for half an hour.
My point is, I don't know what my point.
My point is, Dropbox. My point is, I'm not sponsored by Dropbox, but I damn well should be because I've been evangelizing about that for decades.
That's true.
Successfully. Mm-hmm. All right. Anyway, best wishes. Let us move forward to this week's episode, Empok Nor, Season 5, Episode 24, which aired on May 19th, 1997. Oh, just warming up for my birthday. Feeling all 17. Oh, what a life. The top song continued to be Hypnotized by Notorious B.I.G. The top movie continued to be The Fifth Element.
Yes.
In week 2. Good fun. Mike, what was on TV tonight?
Keith, I'm so glad you asked. I'm so glad. There's such good stuff. I'll highlight a few things because this is one of those times when...
when Mike filibusters because he forgot to look it up.
No, I have it here. I will say this is one of those nights where I remember. This is crazy. It is so long ago, but you remember certain nights. I'm certain I was watching television because I remember watching this. This was the breakout of David Blaine, his first ABC special, Street Magic. I remember watching that because like I've mentioned on the show before, I'm a big David Copperfield guy. That was sort of my big magician crush, if you will. But man, when I saw Street Magic with David Blaine, whoo, baby, that thing blew my mind. Blew my mind. Also, tonight, I know you were watching because I sure was, Keith, on ABC after David Blaine, just kidding, not ABC, NBC, was part 2 of, do you remember the TV Odyssey remake?
Well, let me tell you, you said NBC. That means no go for Keith in Vermont because we could not get cable and we could not pick up NBC over the air.
I remember so little about the Odyssey 2-parter made-for-TV movie, but I do remember this. Armand Assante, right? He was the lead guy. He was Telemachus or... No, that's his son, Telemachus, right? Oh my God, who's the lead of the Odyssey?
Homer.
No, Homer wrote it. Anyway.
And that is seen for all I know about the Odyssey because
So
I was not the kid who paid attention.
Vanessa Williams.
Oh, interesting.
And I'll never forget Bernadette Peters.
Interesting. Deep Space Nine's Vanessa Williams and Broadway's Bernadette Peters.
Broadway's everybody, really.
That's true. Vanessa Williams is also Broadway's, yeah.
So basically that was what was on TV. 2 things I absolutely loved.
Okay. Yeah, speaking of... I was... because I'm me and my brain works differently than most people's, was watching a pretty good bootleg of Dance of the Vampires from about 20 years ago, which I was obsessed with on Broadway. Starring, you ready for this?
Michael Ball?
Rene Auberjonois.
Get out of here.
He was in Dance of the Vampires with Michael Crawford.
Keith, you know what my favorite conversation of this week was? Was when you hypothesized that it's potential that there is potential that both of us have some sort of neurodivergence.
Oh, shocking, right? I don't know what, like, this is like the...
You pitched it to me as if it was going to blow my mind, and I was like, yeah, yes, and...
This week was the first time, like, it clicked in for me. It's like, I've had a lot of people in my life be like, hey, have you ever looked into that, buddy? And my oldest friend from growing up mentioned that he has now, like, realized that he is dealing with that. And he's like, yeah, and, you know, people other than me might also have similar things with this. I was like, oh. Yeah. So I like this week, being somebody whose brain works differently, I've done a great deal of research in the last 5 days. And, yeah, I think I think a lot of us in this communal family here.
What is normal?
Might be in that boat. Yeah, normal's boring. Anyway, yeah, so like I texted Mike like, Mike, this is gonna blow your mind. I knew it was not going to. All right, so you know what was blowing people's minds? It was what was Voyager doing this week. This was the iconic episode, the beginning of the turnaround and the launch of Voyager Prime, the Voyager that everyone is excited about. This was the season finale, Scorpion, Part 1. This was a very important episode in Voyager time. It was a very important episode for my family because, as I've talked about, I think on one of the things, or several of the things, the monster sound of species 846, whatever it is, there was a battle between the 3 sound effects designers, including my uncle. Guess who won? My older brother. It was his monster sound for 847-24601. So, anyway, when we get there in a couple of years, Mike, you're not going to remember this now, but keep an eye out. Scorpion is going to change some stuff.
Okay.
All right, so Empok Nor was directed by Michael Vehar, who last directed on The Darkness and the Light. It has a teleplay by Hans Beimler and a story by Brian Fuller. Of course, who also worked on The Darkness of Light and would go on later to be the creator of Disco. Which means it is time for something trivial.
Now Keith, waste your time.
Oh, God.
With trivial
Every week.
trivia.
Yeah, you'd think I would just, like, set it and forget it, but no.
Oh, we would know that's not going to happen anymore.
Keith, I mean, does that mean I should just get a board that has automated faders? Clearly, right? I mean, I should just spend all that money.
I mean, you're closing on a house in
3 weeks?
what? Yeah. Like 27 days. So, no, you can't buy anything.
I think
Can't
what I
even buy
might do is
toothpaste.
close if all the blessings come and we get to close. That's like 2 days or a week before Halloween. I'm thinking for Halloween, instead of candy, my last Halloween here, instead of candy, I'm going to hand out all the crap I don't want to move. Here's
Hey,
a bowl.
kid, here's
a
an end
couch.
table that the cat chewed on. Perfect. I like it. I like it. Like,
instead of trick or treat, it's trick or soiled couch.
no, you can't be rude, kid. You got to take it.
Yeah.
You know, you took that freaking apple from the old lady.
Check the couch for razor blades.
Definitely. Okay, I'm more worried about it being soiled for some reason. That concerns me much more.
Yeah, it's fair.
Oh.
Fair.
Right. Trivial trivia. So this episode marks the first appearance of the environmental suit in a Star Trek episode since Whom Gods Destroy in 1969, though the environmental suits of various designs have been seen in Star Trek films. The type of suit worn by Garrick in this episode was designed for, Mike, you've got to know this.
Ask the question again?
The environmental suit that Garrick wears in this episode was from which Star Trek movie that we have watched with the patrons and seen custom and regular figures made of?
Yeah, it's when they're walking outside, and was that Wrath of Khan?
No.
No, it's the other one.
Star Trek First Contact.
Yes.
And so this is so they made these amazing costumes
Suits
for
are
First
awesome.
Contact, which then could be used on the subsequent series. And so we will see this several times on Star Trek Voyager. Pretty cool. The new Type 3 phaser rifle that we see Nog hold, also from Star Trek First Contact. Although this is its only appearance on Deep Space Nine, interestingly. So, in Brian Fuller's original pitch for this episode, the story involved Worf and Garrick, and they're in a runabout and come across a derelict ship adrift. It is littered with bodies and they attempt to work out what happened. Garrick turns on Worf and sets out to try to kill him. Fuller compared this idea to the 1978 film Blue Sunshine. I think what we ended up with was better. I think it was much more fun. The episode was quite controversial amongst the producers because of a racial slur made by a member of Starfleet. Something in which Gene Roddenberry would have been aghast. When Amaro is talking about Stolsov, he comments he wants to kill the Spoonhead, who killed her. According to Renee Echevarria, this line hadn't been scripted and hadn't been approved by the producers. This was because it was considered background dialogue, which isn't written into the script. All the background dialogue is created on the ADR looping stage after the episode has been shot, and it isn't approved by either showrunner Ira Stephen Bear or Rick Berman. Usually, this is because such dialogue is barely audible, if audible at all. In this particular case, however, the line could be heard. The term spoonhead was introduced in Things Past, but it was spoken by a member of the Bajoran resistance, a slightly different matter. As Echevarria explains, here was a Starfleet officer basically making a racist slur without it being commented on or corrected. One of Roddenberry's most important maxims was that there was no racism in Starfleet, so the worry was this line was going against one of the basic principles of Star Trek. However, when Ira Bear and Rick Berman did finally hear the line, they chose to leave it in, as they felt it illustrated the pressures of the situation and was appropriate given the circumstances. As Echevarria says, it was racist, but it was also very real. Fascinating both from the philosophical standpoint of Star Trek, but also the production standpoint. That this happened on an ADR stage, might have even been improvised. by the actor doing ADR and got in. Interesting like sequence of events that led to the decision and led to that staying in there. And I think his point, like, it is racist but also real, and I think that's interesting.
Yeah, and the fun part is that that actor still got paid as a background extra, and that instead of the
he had lines in the regular episode.
Oh, okay, cool.
It was one of our red shirts. Well, you want to know who is never racist and never a red shirt? Because they're gonna make it through this episode, Mike.
We couldn't do the show without the loving support of our patrons. That's Brian Kilmer, Beersock, Peter Bank, Frank Rinch, Quarks Bar, Yanba, Ryan Chesley, Joshua Cronin, Merritt Neve, Andrew Hayes, Alan, and the Mysterious Wharfs, Big Old Boot Shivs, Charles Babbage, Harry, what kind of head? Pothead, Anton Thies, Carl Fisher, CRM Productions, Nikolay, Ivanovich, Lobachevsky, YouTube viewer, James Hubbard, Hibernation Pod, Miri, Holcomb, Brian from the Video Game Drive-By, Odo's Bucket, Lost Emu, Scotty B, JD Makes, Colin, Chris, Frank, Pat, Joshua, Kevin, they send us stuff, Bolian for soup. Oh, we lost a good Bolian this week. Lutz Kremer, White Eldridge, and Andreas Erickson. You can join that team, and if you play your cards right, or just forget to cancel your subscription, you can end up here on the Patron Hall of Fame. And you can see those are our glorious members who have donated or negligenced themselves into the slide of over $100. We thank everybody. Really means a lot to us. Couldn't do it without you. And you can join the team, patreon.com/K&M.
So the guest stars on Empok Nor, of course, Andrew Robinson back as Garrick, Aaron Eisenberg as Nog, and our red shirts, Tom Hodges as Pachetti, Andy Milder as Bokta, Margine Holden as Stolzoff, and Jeffrey King as Amaro. I think it is time to go into that room. The dark, scary room. Okay, so in our teaser, Quarks is suspiciously quiet. He rushes Kira, Dax, and Worf to order before they discover there's a terrible maintenance noise happening just above them. I believe it's a common affliction called living in New York City. They peace out for the quieter Klingon restaurant. And it's interesting to see here, Quark is being inconvenienced by something that isn't caused by his own doing. Because something is throwing off his business almost every time we see him, but up until now, it has always been his fault. And that's, here we go. It's not your fault, Quark. Nog and O'Brien are doing repairs in the Jeffries tube. Nog is doing a great job assisting, showing some of the engineering acumen that his father has. Not surprising. But we find out that the task is hopeless. Some of the Cardassian components of Deep Space Nine are breaking down, and they don't have the parts to repair it. So, O'Brien suggests going and salvaging parts from Deep Space Nine's sister station, Empok Nor. It's the same design as Deep Space Nine, and it was abandoned about a year ago. I think we have mentioned Empok Nor once or twice before, just sort of in passing.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, it's that. Remember that scene where we kind of flash back, and we're on Deep Space Nine previously? And we see Odo, and he's chief of security. I think they mentioned it on that episode. For some reason, that's what I flash back to.
I think you're right. So it's not unprecedented, but we've never seen it.
Definitely heard of it before.
Which is cool. So, it's a great idea. But Odo reminds them that Cardassians tend to booby-trap their abandoned stuff, specifically targeting non-Cardassians. So, Sisko naturally suggests taking Garrick along. Because, we haven't had a Garrick episode in a while, and he's always welcome. Garrick agrees in exchange for a larger store. Well played, but he's bothered by something else. He says, I noticed that lately. It's just that lately I've noticed that everyone seems to trust me. It's quite unnerving. I'm still trying to get used to it. Next thing I know, people will be inviting me to their homes for dinner. Not after this.
Keith, do you hear that?
What's that?
I think you dropped your foreshadow.
Oh, indeed. Indeed. There's a lot of good foreshadowing
Yes.
in this episode. Meanwhile, we meet some lower deckers coming on the mission. 2 security officers, Stoltzov and Amaro, and 2 engineers, Bokta and Pachetti. Bokta is a, let's all say it together, 1, 2, 3, Boyan! Just woke the cat up. It's like, what nonsense are you up to right now? The engineers are nervous, and the security officers are cocky. Then Nog shows up holding the giant phaser rifle from Star Trek First Contact. And we know, I bet it's all going to go great. And they head out. In the original script here, before we go to credits, there were going to be ominous shots of Empok Nor, including the Cardassian reveal, before we go to credits. And I think it's better without.
I agree.
I think it's better with the slow build here. So in Act 1, Garak and Nog are playing Cardassian chess. Nog is regrouping and Garak is annoyed. Now I had a thought here. It's not quite a wormhole. It's like a wormhole-it. Considering we're bringing back a bunch of components from a giant space station, it's weird that it's just a runabout. Like, I mean, which is not to say the Defiant has like huge, like, space to put components, but the runabout's not very big, especially with 7 people on it.
Well, let me ask you this though. Do we have the technology to? We have tractor beaming, right? So we could tractor pull it. But do we have like a cargo bay built that is like cargo beaming?
Meaning,
like
a trailer, or
no, like,
or like can we?
Could we beam aboard like a big manifold into like a special cargo transport, like back to the station, or it's too far?
Not from the station. No, they're like days away.
Oh, okay.
It's in a different system.
All right.
So yeah, no, they couldn't do that. But I would imagine like
They just pull it along.
Yeah, I bet using a tractor beam you could have a trailer, but we don't know how big the things are. I'm just assuming.
But then you need to get another runabout in front of our runabout that says oversized load on it, and just
That's right, with some blinky lights.
yeah, drives the whole way with it.
Right, that's a very important. And then we're gonna bring the Cybertruck version of the runabout, and it breaks down immediately.
I don't know about over in Jersey, but here in this weird pocket of purple I live, there's just Cybertrucks everywhere.
I saw my first one.
Yeah, it's weird. And every person I look at them, I have such disdain in my heart.
It's like
I can't
an idiot
explain
detector.
it. Yeah,
It really is.
It's like, what's
I
wrong
mean,
with
look,
you?
they are the 21st century DeLorean.
Yeah, but at least a DeLorean could turn left.
I mean,
These guys, like everyone I've seen that's tried to pull around a corner, it can't do it. It's
but
ridiculous.
DeLoreans were notoriously crappy too.
Yes, but they weren't tanks.
They weren't tanks that broke down when they hit a leaf. Anyway,
Hot take.
and I
Keep
don't
in
mean
my-
the car leaf.
Yeah.
I mean an actual leaf,
Hot take.
not a Nissan. All right, yeah, hot takes about cars for some
Yeah,
reason.
Keith
When
and Mike
neither
hate the
one of us
Cybertruck.
give the tiniest crap about cars.
No.
Anyway, Garak and Nog are playing Cardassian chess. Nog is regrouping, and Garak is annoyed. He says Katra isn't about regrouping and hoarding assets. It's about bold strategy and decisive action. He decides to vent his frustration at O'Brien by talking about O'Brien's time fighting the Cardassian War. It's more foreshadowing with this chess thing. We get it. O'Brien says, "I'm not a soldier anymore. I'm an engineer." I see. So when you and Dr. Bashir disappear into the holosuites for hours at a time, you're just repairing them. What's your point, Garak? I'm just curious. Why do you and Dr. Bashir spend hours in the holosuites dressed up as fighter pilots, reliving ancient battles? He's got a fair point there.
He does, but, but. They've never shown O'Brien on the show to be any sort of cockiness of his time in the military, right? Like, he doesn't brag, he doesn't boast,
definitely
he's
not.
very... So it is weird, and Garak, on the other hand, has very much shown himself to be maybe loyal to the Obsidian Order, but very much not loyal to Cardassia. So it's weird that he's got a bug up his ass before we get to the plot point.
No, he has many times actually referenced, because like, for Garrick, O'Brien's like, it was war, I had to do it. For Garrick, he killed a bunch of Cardassians. And Garrick is loyal to that. Like whether he's needling him because he really believes it, or he's needling him because he knows
bored?
it's a vulnerability.
Oh, yeah, that's fair.
He knows that O'Brien is very conflicted about his time, and of all the people, there's a lot of talk about the slur of spoonheads, but like Cardi is not that much different, and we hear O'Brien use Cardi all the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's fair. Okay.
Anyway, so Pachetti enters, and they go over their list of things to salvage. Must-haves, could use, and would be nice, which I think is a very good way of organizing. Pachetti is also looking for Cardassian military artifacts, but O'Brien is having none of it. He says, "This is a salvage operation, Pachetti, not an opportunity to indulge in your collecting obsessions." And I feel personally attacked by that line. They arrive at the station and see it looks exactly like Deep Space Nine, but tilted to the side. It's oddly effective in making a familiar thing looking ominous. It's just like something about it flipped. Like it's nothing more than a different angle in space. There are no angles or whatever, but it is like disconcerting to see the station at an angle like that. So Garrick helps disable the door locks because he knows only a Cardassian can do it. And he beams aboard in a spacesuit and turns on the gravity and power. Smart to think that they wouldn't have gravity on when they get on there. And when everything's dark, it's really easy to like hold the thing up just out of camera, then drop it down. Cheap, easy way to simulate lack of gravity. So he starts turning things on, and I thought this definitely has some Event Horizon vibes. One of the best sci-fi and horror films out there.
It's funny. I remember the first time I watched Event Horizon, I remember seeing it in the theaters, and I don't know how, Keith, but I didn't know it was a horror film, and it really turned me off. I really it was a little.
Really?
It was a little like esoteric for me. It was a little out. I thought it was going to be a space romp, and
it's Event Horizon.
Yeah,
a space romp for the whole family.
So when I went back and I visited it since, I really appreciate it for what it is and enjoy it. But I remember the first time I saw it in theater, I was like, I hated that.
Interestingly, it came out the same year as this episode.
Oh, that is funny.
In 1997. I've watched it for the first time with my dad, and it scared the bejesus out of both of us.
You know what other movie did that to me? I do like to go into movies not knowing anything about them. I went and saw this movie, you probably remember it, called What Dreams May Come, with Robin Williams.
Sure, yeah.
And I expected a Robin Williams romp.
Sure.
Which that movie is not. That movie is dark.
Yeah.
And, I didn't love it. But it's a good movie.
You know what I enjoy thinking about, though? Every time you don't know what a movie is about, you assume it's a romp.
You might not see me
optimism.
You might not see me as a glass half full kind of guy, but when it comes to films,
it is very strange knowing you and knowing your brain the way I do, with such an optimistic view of films. Anyway, so now we find out that we're not alone on the station when 3 stasis pods are activated with the station's powers, and one of them opens their eyes. And so in the station record it says, to see inside, a Cardassian soldier lies in a bed of bluish gel-like substance. We move in close in the face, and after a beat, his eyes pop open. Wish they'd fully executed that. Our heroes dock and enter the station. They break up into 3 teams, and O'Brien warns them all to be wary of booby traps. They wander through the dark corridors using flashlights. It's dark and tense and cheap because they can just reuse the Deep Space Nine set and just turn the lights out. Very effectively, I think. Then Garrick gets some blue goo on his hand and is immediately suspicious. And I think if they were able to have the budget to have the Cardassians floating in the blue gel, like they had sort of intimated in that stage directions. Two things. One, that would have been really cool to see. And two, I think the blue goo thing here would have made more sense. Because I think here, we don't see the goo ahead of time, and we don't really see it after. Like, they're not covered in goo or whatever, so this feels like a plot device to have Garrick notice this and go to the thingy. That's a little bit unexplained in the episode proper because we don't ever see it.
Is the blue goo what makes him the drug thing?
It's a good question. I don't know.
I just assumed that it's when he gets into the pod and hides in the pod is when he gets.
Could be that too. Yeah, we're like that's unclear. It's a don't worry about it section of this thing, but I feel like it. We lost some of our wormhole. But yeah, I think that the A to B to C of that. I don't know if it's a wormhole. It's just not clear.
I'm making it an official one.
Okay. Official wormhole. There it is.
You should, if it's such. It drives him to commit murder. We should see it happen.
Yes, or at least see how it is done. Is it a gas? Is it a goo? Is it a whatever? Like, what's happening here? Is it airborne from the other people who have gone,
I just
space
assumed
crazy?
it was inside that pod because he does close the door of the pod.
He does.
But the easy shot to just have him show him breathe it, right?
Although, yeah, it's strange. It's a hole. It's a hole. So, anyway, he goes straight for the stasis tubes, apparently knowing exactly what it is the minute he sees it, and discovers 2 of them functional but empty, and another that failed, leaving a half-mummified, half-eaten Cardassian inside. Now, Nerd Me would wonder how much decomposition there would actually be in just a year in a space station without life support on. But in headcanon, and I think it's kind of, it has to be, based on the thingy, that it was eaten by voles, leaving only the skeleton. Because all of his innards are gone, that kind of stuff, that wouldn't have happened. And we know that there are voles there. I think it was just too grim to actually explicitly say it. So the Bolian finds a rank insignia and plans to give it to Pachetti. Meanwhile, Nog and O'Brien are working, but Nog forgot one of the tools and has to go back to the runabout to retrieve it. Garrick calls O'Brien to the infirmary to show him the pods, but Nog discovers that the runabout has been set adrift and explodes, trapping them on the station. That's an and a great act break. So in Act 2, they all gather together and realize that the two Cardassians who woke up must have done it. Pachetti recognizes the insignia. If you're telling me that there are 2 Cardassian soldiers from the 3rd Battalion loose on the station, we're in trouble. Death to all. That was their motto. So not only are they space crazy, they also are from a pretty hardcore battalion. They realize that the Cardassians are here to defend the station. Then they discover that their tricorders are no longer working. A dampening field has been set up. And here is my official...
Coming.
Okay. Now, I understand that dampening fields are not all equal, and there must be different types of dampening fields. But usually, when we have a dampening field, that means the phasers don't work either. But they seem to work just fine. And I'm not sure why you would set up a dampening field for tricorders, but not phasers.
I guess they don't want you to, see that they're alive. But, yeah, why not just shut the weapons off, too, if you're going to go at it that way?
Yeah. Unclear.
Interesting. Speaking of unclear, this scene is really interesting one to me because, look, we get... Hold on, let me turn off your wormhole real quick. It's officially noted. We get it. The second we saw the crew we were bringing with us, we had a suspicion that all or some of them weren't coming back, right? That's pretty evident. But it's still on the writers and the direction to make them sympathetic characters so that there's some weight to their demises. I think that in this scene, it's weird to me because 2 out of the 4, I think they write really good.
Yeah.
Especially 1 out of the 4. The Bolian, I think they write really, really well. Right? He's got like hopes, dreams, aspirations, fears. He's the one guy who's like, why do we keep splitting up? Maybe we should stick together? But
it's always the blue ones that go first.
Yeah, but Eddington adjacent guy and his female friend,
Eddington standby.
Yeah, all they do is quip. They're in this like life and death scenario. Clearly, there are stakes, and it's just quip, 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 quippity, quip, 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 quippity, quip.
Well, yes, but I think we are to take from that the overconfidence of the security guys. They're the gun guys. They're the tough guys. They're in security.
All right.
And so they're the military and aliens.
And he keeps looking at her. He keeps looking at her with that like, and I was like, he's gonna die first. But unfortunately, it's not him.
Yeah, she dies first. But they're all gonna die. But yeah, no, they're over. Their defining characteristic is kind of being cocky, military folks. So, and then the engineers are, nervous or collectors.
We see you, Andrew Robinson. We see you face acting the shit out of every scene. Trust me, we see you.
It's Andrew Robinson, of course. So, they now have a new mission. Find a way to contact Deep Space Nine for help. O'Brien has a technobabble solution to turn the station into a telegraph. Cool idea. But they need to split into teams again to pull off the task. And he assigns 1 engineer and 1 security guard each for the teams. They begin work, but Garrick still has some questions. And he says, I'm not convinced Stolzov was right about our Cardassian friends. Why would anybody voluntarily seal themselves into a stasis tube, possibly for years, just to guard an abandoned station? Even for the 3rd Battalion, isn't that fanatical? Something else is going on. Garrick's right. They continue to discuss while Nog stalks around the corner with his phaser rifle, which I thought was pretty cute, because he always sort of comes off sort of kid-like, running around with his phaser like we would in the basement, but also it's real. But we find out he is also being stalked by one of the Cardassians. Meanwhile, Pachetti and Stolzov work nervously. They hear a door open and hide with their phasers. The elevator comes down and opens, but it's just a distraction. So Stolzov heads up to get a better vantage point. Now, of course, our buddy Pachetti, I feel seen, is fascinated by another emblem when a Cardassian full-on stone colds through a glass panel and yanks them in through the wall. Thought that was a pretty good jump scare.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, I screamed. If you'd like to see me nearly crap myself on camera, join the Patreon, patreon.com/KNM.
And later, pick up the couch he crapped himself on his trick-or-treating. Definitely the trick. You got a giant couch with a suspicious
trick-or-treat,
stain.
Smell my feet, and if you don't mind, take this couch to the dump.
But I thought like breaking through the glass wall utterly unnecessary from the standpoint of like taking this guy out, just ridiculous. However, super cool. Then the other one attacks Stolzov and throws her off the second ring of the promenade. Later, O'Brien, Nog, and Garrick find her body. She's dead. And they find Pachetti's body. They are both dead. Okay, let's hear it.
Now, this doesn't rise to a full wormhole, but I have to mention it. Mm-hmm. We've been blinky light everything. This lady fell. It seems pretty traumatic, but I'm looking at her. Now, I know we're going to commercial. And so the general go-to-commercial activities are freeze, mill about, and let it fade to black.
Right.
But there's a lot of time wasted here just looking at this person with a flashlight. I don't see a pulse checked. I don't hear a, are you doing all right? How are you feeling? Are you alive? It's just go to commercial, come back, sheet over body.
Now, normally they'd have a tricorder there that would tell them really effing dead.
Uh-huh.
But no, the tricorders don't work.
She's merely most sincerely dead, we assume.
That's right, yeah. I'm not dead yet. Yeah, we really jumped to dead real fast here. Whatever.
I mean,
it's part of the red shirts are very brittle.
Poor guy.
So, yeah, both of them. So in Act 3, super dead, super dead. I don't know where they got sheets from, why they have sheets, why it's not a space sheet.
What's the point of that? Why do we have to cover the body?
Because it's our universal sign for dead.
You're right. Or I guess, you know what? They don't want the voles to get in.
Oh yeah, the voles weren't deterred by the stasis pod filled with goo. I'm sure that sheet won't. I was like, oh, there's a sheet. Oh, I've been starving for a year, but no, there's a sheet.
That's not that they're not going to get her. They just don't want to watch her eat the lady.
That's fair.
Or they didn't want to pay her the extra scene. They're like,
the voles want some privacy while they're chewing on the still alive person.
She had a heart out herself, Keith, and so they were like, oh, she can't be on set today, so just get a sheet.
Yeah, fair enough. So they pull sheets over the dead, and naturally the Bolian is freaking out. You want to know why? Because Bolians are always the scared guy.
Side note, Bolian's really good in this episode. I really appreciate his performance. Did it earn him any future Star Trek appearances?
Well, he'd be dead, so...
No, I mean, like, the actor.
They're like Weekend at Burning. It's gonna Weekend at Bolians. Like next episode, like Worf's holding up his head. I'm scared.
Terrible.
So O'Brien, however, is a good leader and gets him to head off on another mission with the remaining security guard. Garak, on the other hand, has decided to head off on his own and take out the Cardassians. But he's showing Chekhov's signs of stress and aggression. And Garak said, "That's the spirit. Why don't you come with me, Chief? Kill a few Cardis. It'll be like old times. Wouldn't you like to avenge their death?" "No, I just want to go home." "You're fighting your instincts. I can see it. The hero of Setlik 3 is still inside there somewhere." Later, Garak is searching the computer in the stasis chamber room, starting to do the I'm going crazy itching, when he sees he's being hunted by one of the Cardassians. So there's a tense game of cat and mouse, each hunting each other, until we reveal that Garak has hidden himself in the damaged chamber where the corpse was. So he already had space crazy before he went into the chamber.
Yes.
So Garak pops out of the damaged chamber and kills the first Cardassian. But Mike, he's clearly got the crazies.
So it has to be from the goo.
I think so.
Okay.
Has to be from the goo. So, meanwhile, O'Brien and Nog chat while they work. And Nog says, "Chief, why does Garak keep bringing up Setlik 3? "Because he wants to get under my skin." "But you're a hero, weren't you?" "Doesn't mean I like thinking about what happened there. I was a soldier, Nog, and sometimes soldiers have to kill." And Garak pops in. "Come now, Chief, don't be so modest. You did a lot of kidding." Nog says, "How are you in here? Both doors are secure." Great line from Garak here. "Secure is such a relative term, wouldn't you agree?" "One down, one to go. By the way, I took a tissue sample from the soldier's body. The analysis was rather fascinating in a grim sort of way. It would seem that the unfortunate soul had been giving a massive dose of a psychotropic drug. Why? I'm not sure, but I can tell you one thing, it wasn't to make him amicable. The drug's protein structure seems designed to amplify my people's xenophobic tendencies. My guess is that the soldiers that were left here were part of some Cardassian military experiment. The High Command may have been looking for ways to further motivate their troops."
So it's like if you took the Captain America super serum and injected it into a Trump rally?
You beat me to it. Injected it with MAGA?
Yeah.
And what I wrote was, "Xenophobia? Weird they talk about that, because in the future, we've entirely solved that."
That's
right.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So Garak heads out to kill the other Cardassian, but O'Brien notices something looking off about Garak's face.
Or the gaping wound on his shoulder that he's itching? That too.
Yeah, whatever. So in another section, Bokta and Amaro discuss Garak. And Bokta says, "If I'd known he was so dangerous, I never would have complained about my hem." We realize that Garrick is lurking in the shadows listening, fighting off the crazies. But he spots the second Cardassian hunting them, so he hunts the hunter. But not before the Cardassian guy kills Bacta with a door in classic 90s slasher fashion. And we hear the crunch of Bocta's neck snapping. Yuck. This is full on Friday the 13th now. But before he can shoot Amaro, Garrick shoots him in the back. And Amaro is shocked. He says he asked me to get a coil spanner for him. I turned my back for a second. Garrick looks down at the tool in his hand. It's a shame. And you know what the worst part is? This isn't a coil spanner. And then Garrick stabs Amaro with the tool.
Great line.
Great line. Great little moment there. So in Act 4, I have a wormhole pending. So just get your finger on the button. So when O'Brien calls and Amaro and Bacta don't reply, he goes to them and discovers a wounded Amaro who tells him that Garrick stabbed him. And these are his last words. Hit me with a wormhole. All right. I have two wormholes here. One of them is kind of piggybacking on your previous one. You just got stabbed with a thing. That doesn't kill you that fast. It doesn't kill you. Unless like he got him in the neck or the heart directly, which I don't think he did. Definitely a survivable injury. But my real wormhole here is, you see where his bloody hand is? He's, you know how easy it is for him to hit the communicator and talk to O'Brien?
But stasis field, right? No, because Garrick uses one later.
Because they're talking all the time. So the dampening field does not affect the communicators either. Because they're chatting up the whole time. And you could have just like, beep, hey, help, I need a blinky. And then I'll be fine.
Also, this scene seems superfluous to me. Like, I think for me, it's more effective. If you're going to make Garrick kill him. Garrick wouldn't leave him there bleeding it out. Like, he would have just made sure he was dead. If he's having that. And that way, when Garrick calls and he's like, it was me, it's more effective than him telling him here. I think it's a worse reveal.
Right. Because I think that the structural, from a writing standpoint, they need to find a way to tell O'Brien and Nog it was Garrick who killed him, because otherwise they'd assume it was the other Cardassian. But I think there are other ways to do that don't open up this wormhole.
Yeah, the reveal, because now we know it's Garrick, but they don't, so there's more tension. And then there's a secondary reveal when they discover Garrick. We get to enjoy that as well. So I think we missed something in this way.
I mean, I get it, because as a writer, I'm always thinking about how do I get information to the people who need the information structurally. But it's just a better way to do that. Anyway,
actually, it reminds me, Keith, as we're talking about this. No shade to this person. It's just funny to me. We got a comment about another show. I think we were watching. I think it's on the Strange New Worlds show. From a viewer, thank you for watching, that claimed that potentially we nitpick a little too much, to which I'm like, well, we are doing a 3-hour podcast on a 1-hour show. Yeah, basically, nitpicking is kind of the thing.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it's true. We do nitpick,
100%
but we're not.
Agree.
But we're nitpicking from the standpoint of people who like it.
Yeah.
And so we're interested in all of these machinations. It's not nitpicking to make it be less. It's nitpicking because we're genuinely interested.
Yeah.
So, at least I hope that's how it comes off, because that is the honest truth.
Yeah.
So, O'Brien figures out that Garrick must have the crazies because he was exposed to the drug that the Cardassians were doped with. And now he knows he has to change tactics. You don't wait for the enemy to come to you. You go to him. Like the chess scene. Themes, bitch! So they cut straight to Garrick in the Overseer's office, where he's assembled another chessboard and villain monologues, making the theme, let's say, clear for those in the back. While he talks, O'Brien and Nog make chase, now knowing where Garrick is. They split up and try to corner Garrick, but of course it's a trap. And Garrick splits them up and traps O'Brien in the office so he can capture Nog. Which takes us to Act 5. It's all a game to crazy Garrick now. And he realizes he releases O'Brien and has headed to the promenade with a tied up Nog. He taunts O'Brien over the intercom about his killing of Cardassians, and they agree to meet. No weapons, right? No weapons. O'Brien enters the promenade and discovers the bodies of the dead strung up on the walls. Psychological warfare from Garrick here. It has a very Apocalypse Now kind of a vibe to him at this point. With the weird bodies. Weird behind the scenes stories of that movie on that. Anyway. So he finds Garrick standing holding the phaser on Nog. Garrick, of course, having the upper hand here, makes O'Brien drop both his rifle and his hidden phaser, naughty naughty, and O'Brien puts his phaser and tricorder on the floor. Very ostentatiously so, because we need to know that later. Garrick puts his weapon down too, so they can fight hand to hand. Interesting. And Garrick is kicking O'Brien's ass. And of course, we set up our great 80s movie here. Garrick says something, maybe it's not true, and maybe you're not a soldier anymore. And O'Brien's like, you're right, I'm an engineer. And O'Brien uses his comm badge to set off his trap, an exploding tricorder, and this knocks Garrick out. Thus setting ourselves up to be able to send a message home and resolve the story. So back on Deep Space Nine, Bashir explains that he's healed Garrick's crazies. Bashir says he wasn't in control of his actions. An important thing to point out here. O'Brien goes to talk to him. The mission was successful, but there will be an inquest. But Garrick likely won't be held accountable. Garrick feels badly, genuinely, and wants to apologize. O'Brien says, Julian says the blast broke a few of your ribs. That could have been worse. If I'd been any closer to that phaser, I would have been killed. And O'Brien says, don't take this the wrong way, but that was the plan. Garrick says, I understand. I'll see you around.
Oh, also, could you go apologize for me? Because I don't want to.
Yeah. Would you just go apologize for me? That was, maybe you could just send a note. But, it's not how he does it. All right, I'll tell you how we do it in our after show.
AlamarEmmys, count to 4. AlamarEmmys, let one more. AlamarEmmys, it's AlamarEmmys time.
Okay, so this is an interesting episode, and I thought about this while I was writing the summary, because so much of this episode is not... Oh, Mike, you're so tall. Oh my goodness. Look how tall Mike is.
Let me see if I can... You go ahead. Continue.
I fix it, yeah. So much of this episode is about the visual. It's not about the dialogue. And there's... I bet that if you counted the word count of dialogue spoken in this episode, it'd be much lower than most episodes. And it's so much about the atmospherics. It's about sneaking around in the dark and suspense and building all of these things. So it's a little bit harder to adjudicate while just sort of talking about it. So it's just a thought that I had, because it's an action movie. It's a suspense movie.
You're very
and
much
not
right.
Like a lot of the episodes. But that doesn't mean we can't talk about our best moments.
Yeah, there's a lot of great ones. I think what you just said, I think visually this episode is really stellar. And I think I really want to commend the direction as well, because there's a lot of just dialogue, like the dialogue that does take place. In fact, I think basically when we set up the last showdown, the direction and the execution up until the denouement is probably my best moment, right? The blowy blow, the blasty blast is fine, whatever. That's a cool trick, but really the stalking and the kind of, they don't just do static ones of O'Brien and Garrick. There's this like subtle like curved pan, which is sort of an advanced technique that's very common nowadays, but was not so much then. It wasn't just like a dolly shot. It was like a almost handheld. It was really cool, panning back and forth during their sort of Rambo dialogue, right? So I think that last scene, the stalking scene up to the and the Garrick's final trick on Nog is probably that bit is probably my favorite.
Yeah, and I think for me it's also going to be a visual thing. It's a visual episode, right? For me, it's just the image of the tilted Deep Space Nine.
Yeah.
That's stuck with me. Like I always remember this episode because of that image, because of how disconcerting it is. Just a really clever way to differentiate, and really fun to play here. You know, and I think I should, as we you know what, hit the bumper, and then I'll set up a preamble.
Oh, I didn't do it for this one.
Why, you have to sing it now.
They're self-sealing. Here are some stem bolts for you.
For you.
I was just like about a half a step down.
Yeah, what? Not bad. Not bad. So I have sort of some trivial trivia to add to this, and that was the first draft of this episode by Hans Beimler was kind of rejected by everybody because it was sort of just the action part without giving the Garrick and O'Brien story. So all of the Garrick torturing O'Brien about his war record, that kind of stuff, none of that was in there. And Andrew Robinson was upset by it because it just made Garrick a just like generic psychopath. And he had also spent so much of his career not living down, but in the shadow of the role that made him famous. And that was the bad guy in the first Dirty Harry movie, who was this kind of like raging psychopath. And he was really wanting Garrick to not ever just descend into that part again. And so the second pass at it, which added all this interpersonal stuff, added all these other angles, really, I think, helped the episode a lot, so that it felt like an episode of Star Trek, an episode of these characters, and not just a generic action horror thriller.
It's so funny. This is like the flippy flip of how things generally go. Usually we talk up an episode for me, and when I came off this episode really high on it, really high on it, really enjoyed it, great romp. And as we talked about it, I recognize that like there are a lot of gaping wounds in this episode, right? And I think the sort of pre-tension between O'Brien and Garrick is helpful in some ways because it doesn't feel like such a huge escalation, but at the same time, the drug thing is made to help Garrick jump right to Psycho Killer, right? And also absolve him of it as well. So you also see that there are, you know, the red shirts from the beginning or the lower deckers from the beginning, so you sort of know what's coming. They never really build much threat from the other Cardassians, but yet they're stalking the episode much longer than Garrick's ever the bad guy.
Killed half of our crew.
Yeah, that's fair. But still, we don't really know why, right? They leave them behind as booby traps, but at the same time, then if you're going to do that, why not just set a self-destruct and like what's?
Well, and they do explain that they were part of this experiment, and the experiment failed, and so they left him there because it went wrong, not as necessarily the plan. They're like, these guys they've gone crazy. There's nothing we can do. Let's just lock them up there and see what happens.
Okay. Sure. We could blow up the station too.
But they don't care. It's abandoned.
Yeah, you're fair. That's fair. But the point is that like they're, and also it's not really saying anything. Like the dialogue they have between each other about are you a soldier, are you not, all the chess stuff isn't really saying a lot. Like that conversation isn't as exploratory or deep as it seems on the surface. Like there are ideas there to be discussed, but they don't really we don't really go into it. And the episode isn't really about that. And there is a conversation to have here about xenophobia, but they're not really having that either.
No.
And then at the end, they sort of, I'll commend it for not just for ending it on a very kind of like pull the plug, it goes to black. Like it's sort of like, okay, probably won't be held accountable, but like we know this happened and there's no happy jaunty. So it's just sort of ends, and I kind of like the way it ends. I don't mind that so much. But it's weird because, you know, I guess the sci-fi gives an excuse there, right? Whereas, you know, I've watched some documentaries, or you think about some court cases here where guilty by way of insanity, or the one I watched recently was like this person who literally was sleepwalking and murdered somebody. They have like a really specific case of sleepwalking, and like, are you accountable? Are you not? Like, there's some really interesting moral quandary with that. Here could have that exploration. Not really exploring that either. It just feels almost like a nothing burger as far as plot goes. But all of that said, the horror vibes are on point. Somehow, even though we know those people are going to die, it builds the stakes. Putting Nog there enhances that. He's not a child, but yet we sort of care for him as one of our own, and so him being protected is important. Chief being put in charge of people is important. The darkness of the episode visually is handled really well. I think the lighting and it increases the horror aspects. The thing we haven't mentioned yet, Keithan, is you know what? I'm going back. I'm changing my best moment. Going out on a limb here. I think this is the best score of the season.
Oh, yeah, 100%. Fantastic score.
It's incredible. And because there isn't as much dialogue as you mentioned, we are focused on it, and it is exquisite. I would listen to this.
Very good point. Yeah.
And so all of those pieces actually overcome so many of the things, right? What's it that Jalen Hurts always says that annoys me, but I'm going to use it? Sometimes you got to keep the main thing the main thing. This episode is about vibes. They create an incredible atmosphere, and they execute that. It is executed. It's a horror episode, and that is executed. Sometimes, I guess, you don't have to explore. Sometimes we're doing Rambo. You know what I mean? Alien meets Rambo meets Event Horizon meets every other reference Keith mentioned in this. I really ended up liking it. Not one of the most thought-provoking of the season, but hey, I'd watch Andrew Robinson play any part. So, him giving me Jason Voorhees, I'll take it. 83 self-sealing stem bolts.
Yeah. First off, we should. Jay Chataway composed the music for this.
Best of the season.
Yeah, really, really great work. Yeah, it's funny. Like you talked yourself back up full circle there, and you saved me having to do it myself, because the nitpicks and the criticism and the wormholes, yes, they stand, right? However, as the guy who just requested all of the Friday the 13th movies,
yeah,
right, which are objectively totally stupid and mindless. None of the story makes any sense. None of the characters behave in any way that any human being would behave. They're all disposable from the beginning. You know they're gonna die. It's really just, are they gonna find a fun and exciting way to die? Right. So that's the whole deal, right? And I don't mind that. Like, hey, let's do a Halloween slasher flick, right? Let's do a crazy action thing, and like exactly what you said is right. Let's get the vibes right, and the rest of it will fall into place. It's the visuals, it's the tension, it's the lighting, it's the music, it's the vibes, right? Is it a great episode of Star Trek? No. Is it super fun? And out of 26 episodes this season, to have an episode like this, yeah, bring it on. It's super fun. And so, do I love the idea of Deep Space Nine having an evil twin? I mean, come on, how
Pretty
fun
cool.
is that?
Pretty cool.
And it's a place to explore maybe later, right? And it's really, really fun. And some of the thematic things about the cost of war and Nog and O'Brien's perspectives on it. Nog as someone who's never been through it, O'Brien who has been through it. Will that pay off a little bit later? Maybe it will. So I go ahead.
I neglected to mention one thing I did appreciate. It's sort of the meta narrative of it. Of first thing Garrick says, right? I feel like everybody's starting to trust me, and we have done that. We've kind of made him a hero. But what did we do here? Yes, clearly it's the drug that influenced him, but it wasn't one of those things where I lost my memory. I have no recollection of it.
He knew who he was.
He knew who he was.
He
knew what he did. None of that changed. We didn't take it away from him, so it all exists still.
And what they said was the drug ramped up your xenophobic tendencies, which we know then he has. You can't ramp up something that's not there.
Right. It wasn't like he got implanted with a symbiote or some other thing. It was Garrick.
Yeah.
So
we're definitely, that's the thing with Garrick. It's always like, throw some sweet. We got to put some salt. Throw some sweet. Throw some salt. Throw some complexity. Throw some vulnerability. Throw some strength. And that's what we call that? Layers. So
because then with that line, he does, yes, he stabs that guy. He kills that guy, and that is bad.
Sure does.
Bad Garrick.
Bad murder.
But I still think the evilest thing he does is that line he has and delivers so effectively to Nog when he's like, it takes everything in me to not shoot you in the face. And I was like, damn.
Yeah. It's intense. So let's just like take a quick little diversion into do a crazy slasher in a great environment. Yeah, bring it. 87 self-sealing stem bolts from me. It's fun. It's not, it's not going to make you a better person or understand the world in a deeper way.
This week on a murderous Deep Space Nine.
Yeah, just like let's have some fun, get some candy corn. Let's do this.
Let's do some just lighthearted murder.
Yeah, some delightful murder. That's what I have to say. All right, well, if you enjoyed our podcast about delightful murder, you can give us a like and a thanks, or not a thanks, a comment. You know what I mean, and a subscribe.
You should
and
say murder a few more times for the algorithm. Murder.
Murder. Just murder somebody, cut off a body part, mail it to us. You can get to us at Look at My Star Trek Toys, Look at My Body, whatever. That got weird.
I was look at my butt?
No, I was gonna say like just like body parts in the mail, but then I just said body, and then I said look at my, and then it was like, oh, it's worse. You definitely said, I tried to like
look at my butt.
Nobody wants to see that. Let me be very clear.
Not sure what just
wow,
happened.
we really stuck the landing there. I'm really glad I make sure that you don't edit. Anyway, if you're listening to the audio-only version of this, you don't have to see my butt. No. Because,
you just have to hear it.
You just have to hear it, yeah.
Which
please.
Is maybe worse.
Forget it. You know all the things I say. We'll see you. So this was in IMDb. You got a 7.7. Which made it a 64 out of 173 episodes of Deep Space Nine. Next week,
penultimate
in the cards. Here we go. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you back next week with another episode of Keith and Mike Watch Deep Space Nine. Thank you for watching K&M Entertainment. If you enjoyed our particular brand of nonsense, please like and subscribe. Or become one of our patrons at patreon.com/KNM.
What a murderous Deep Space Nine. Lighthearted murder.
Delightful murder.
Murder?
Just
murder.
Murder somebody. Look at my body.
Look at my butt?
Look at my body.